Now, I want to tell you something that you may not realize. If you live in America, you're already keeping about 80% of these dietary laws. You don't eat vultures, you don't eat possums, and you don't eat snakes, and you don't eat cockroaches. There's just a lot of things you don't eat. So you're already keeping about 80% of these dietary laws. Now, if we look at other countries, though, a lot of other countries, less educated countries, they eat bats, they eat snakes, they eat it all. I mean, they just eat all this unclean meats that are scavengers they eat. And a lot of disease, a lot of things going on there that really is unhealthful, and unhelpful, yeah, too. But anyway, it's only about 20% of some meats that people have a time with, like pig meat, Boy, I sure love that swine. That stuff sure tastes good, And really, even that is a Southern thing. You don't see, if you go up north and you go up in California, you don't see this obsession with pig meat. When I was in school, Franklin County School, it was like they had an obsession with pig meat. I couldn't eat lunch. I kept the dietary laws back then when I was going to school. And, you had pig and blanket on Monday, you had ham sandwiches on Tuesday, you had, pork chops on Wednesday, and you had something else, some other type of pig on Thursday. Friday was the only day I could eat, fish day, and it was probably unclean too, whatever the fish was. But anyway, so it was a pig-infested school that I went, but it's a Southern thing. It's not everywhere, this obsession with pig meat. I went by a church one time, and they had on their nice billboard electronic sign, it said pig roast. Had a date for a pig roast. All people come around. And I'm thinking to myself, these people who claim to know God wouldn't even know how to feed Jesus if Jesus Christ showed up to their church. I mean, if Christ showed up to your church and you offered him, a pig roast, a pig meat, that would be an abomination for him because he says don't eat it, okay? He said that his word, notice this, his word says these beasts are unclean, all right? Then you have the bottom dwellers, the sea life that people like to eat, clean. Now again, they're designed to clean up the bottom of the ocean. They're called scavengers, things like lobsters and crabs, Why would you eat something called a crab? It's like, honey, don't look for me on the shrimp boat. I'm coming home with the crabs. But why would you eat some? Have you ever thought about the names of some of these unclean foods? Like crabs, shrimp. Look at that shrimp eating shrimp. Even the names. And now from God's perspective, God comes along and says, now look. First of all, I named it after a venereal disease, crabs. I put it 2 miles deep below the surface of the ocean, below the water, 2 miles so that you can't get to it, 2 miles deep on the bottom of the ocean. I put it in a shell that you got to have a jackhammer to break it open. And I tell you, don't eat it in my word. Now, what would it take to get your attention? What would it take for God to get your attention? You ever ask the question why we don't hear from God? Why we don't hear God's voice? Well, the reason you don't hear God's voice is because you're not listening to the written word of God. That's the reason you don't hear God's voice. What would it take to get your attention? Do this, don't do that. Eat this, don't eat that.